Other than that, Dale, if you want to do roll call and get this meeting started at 9:01, and I will pull up the flag for us.
Okay, today is January the 20th, 2021. Call this meeting to order, and let's all in our own way stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Amen. All right, let me get that down. Hang on just a second. All right.
Okay, looks like we're all present and accounted for. Roll call, please, Rochelle.
Director Dan Wilkins.
Present.
Director David Smelser. Oh, I think you might be muted there.
Muted. Yeah, present.
Thank you. Director Blake Tresson.
Here.
Director Lane Lewis.
Present.
And President Dale Cox.
Yes.
Thank you. We have established a quorum.
Okay, first item on the agenda, as always, is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item not on the agenda? Now is the time. Go ahead, Rochelle.
Okay, I have submitted several letters that were emailed to me over the last couple of days regarding agenda item number 3 for the Wilderness Forestry Incorporated. If you have comments for that item, please wait until that agenda item is called. Otherwise, we have Jane Davis and Pippin Mater have raised their hands and wish to speak. So we'll go ahead with Jane Davis.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jane Davis, and I am a concerned member of the community. And as I think you know, I've been deeply troubled by the continuous pollution and workplace violations of TTSA. I know there have been many attempts up to and including this very day to play down the impact that these violations have on the Truckee River. First, the TTSA management and board tried to minimize the importance of pH violations, going so far as to claim that orange juice has a lower pH than their violation, as if that were a relevant measure. Truckee River is not made of orange juice. If it were, we would have no aquatic life. And though TTSA and the board have, over time, tried to downplay multiple pH violations as just 0.1%, the truth is that the pH scale is logarithmic, meaning that 0.1 below TTSA's permit requirement means the wastewater being discharged by TTSA into the Truckee River has been 30% more acidic than the lowest standard set forth by the Clean Water Act. Yet TTSA violated this requirement 14 times since Mr. Griffin has been managing TTSA. Then TTSA and its board defended these violations by saying that the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board hasn't punished them, so it must not be very important. Seems to me like Lahontan is not doing their job very well, but how their incompetence, and that's what it is, let's face it, could possibly be construed as a justification for TTSA's poor practices is beyond me. I've been following this issue for 6 months now, and the more I read and the more I learn, the worse TTSA looks. This board really needs to find the courage to change course and change it now. Thank you.
Mute.
Sorry about that. Now we have Pippin Mater.
Great. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this morning. As you guys all know, my name is Pippin Mater. And as you also all know, I've attended the last few meetings bringing up a variety of concerns that are happening at TTSA related to employee relations and the violations of the discharge permit. But this month is a little different. As many of us did, I spent most of January 6th watching the chaos unfold in Washington, D.C. And as with many of us, it made me think about how much we rely on integrity at all levels of our government and how important norms are to our society. What is happening at TTSA has striking similarities to what is happening at the national level. Laws are being broken, right, as exemplified by the cease and desist orders and the lawsuits and the violations of the Clean Water Act and the notice of violation for the lab regarding management tampering, et cetera. But beyond that, beyond the legal issues, TTSA is breaking norms, and that's really arguably as important or more important, right? They're trying to hide public information, what I would say with lying or telling half-truths, abusing their staff, not treating people with basic human decency, and all of that is driving experienced people out of the agency on a monthly basis. Last month, the TTSA board sent a strong message that they're not rubber stamping bad ideas. I really appreciate some of that transparent and clear input the board gave at the last TTSA meeting. I really appreciate the detailed and public discussion of how you want to move forward, especially regarding the lab staff. And while I support the direction the board took, I will caution you that TTSA is not out of the woods yet. The same management that wrote up the last lab director for providing a detailed analysis of staffing needs that wasn't aligned with management vision of reducing staff still exists. Moving forward, the lab director needs to be protected by the board from being similarly pressured and harassed. As we speak, a new administration is being sworn in Washington, and I hope all of us can agree now is a time for integrity at all levels of government. It starts at the community level. I urge this board to do what is right for the community and for the environment and begin the process of finding an appropriate leadership for TTSA. Thank you.
Okay. And if any other public would like to make a public comment not regarding any agenda items, you may raise your hand at the bottom of your screen using the raise hand option. Otherwise, if you heard that at the beginning, I have no other attendees wishing to make a public comment besides those that I submitted to you for your recommendation this morning and yesterday. So
Okay,
free to move on.
so if there are no other items on public comment and no one wishing to speak under public comment, we're going to move on the agenda to professional achievements, awards, and anniversaries.
Good morning, President Cox and directors. Vicki Lufrano, Human Resources Administrator. And this morning, I would just like to acknowledge staff for their professional achievements, awards, and anniversaries received the previous calendar month or quarter. First off, we have Angelina Henson, who is reclassified to Accounting Technician 2, and Rochelle Chavez, who is transferred to Executive Assistant Board Clerk. For the fourth quarter of 2020, we have Safety Suggestion Awards. And those...
Vicki, I'm having trouble hearing you. Could you possibly come closer to the microphone?
Absolutely. Is this better?
That's a lot better. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So we have Safety Suggestion Awards from the fourth quarter of 2020. And that those came from Scott Wilcox to install secondary containment pipe on the caustic line to final effluent to prevent an exposure if a release occurs. and Jaime Garcia to ensure delivery drivers are using chalks for securing trucks from driving off from the loading dock during loading and unloading operations. And last but certainly not least, we have 2 anniversaries, 15-year anniversaries for Brandon Diamond and Dusty Gilmore, both in the operations department. And I would just like to say congratulations to everyone on this list. Thank you so much.
Okay, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank Scott and Jaime for their due diligence in keeping our work environment safe. As we all know, that safety for our employees and a safe work environment is one of our top priorities. So thank you very much, Jaime and Scott, for putting forth that extra effort. Any comment on the presentation and anniversaries? Seeing none and hearing none, we'll go on to the financial the consent agenda.
I'm sorry,
And
Dale.
item 1 on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the December 16th, 2020 meeting. I like to make sure
I'm
that
sorry,
we-
Dale. I'm sorry. We have someone of the public wishing to make a comment regarding Vicky's item.
Okay,
You have a second?
go ahead.
Pippin Mater, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in this, but I guess that Carl just texted me and said he was trying to comment in public comment, but couldn't make that work. Just kind of an FYI.
Okay, yeah. Anyone listening for public comment, if you wish to make a comment at the bottom of your screen, there are options where you just raise your hand, and I'm watching the screen for all attendees, and you automatically jump to the top of the list as soon as you raise your hand.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, anyone available for public comment, Rochelle?
I still do not see any. Oh, here we go. Again, we have Stephanie Bloom. Stephanie, if this item, if you wish to make comment regarding the topic we just discussed, if not, you would have to wait to hold that comment if it's probably, I'm guessing, regarding number 3. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and save those comments for that agenda item as it comes up, but I will leave you with your hand held up so that when we get to that item, we can call on you again.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome, no problem. Okay, Dale, go ahead. That's all we have is Stephanie holding for item number 3.
Okay, so as far as the consent agenda items as past practices, I like to make sure that everyone is in favor of and understand and approve the minutes of the December 16th, 2020 board meeting. If anyone sees any additions or any alterations that should be made on these minutes, now is the time.
Dale, I
Seeing
only
none,
saw, sorry, I only saw one correction to Pippin Mater's name on the attendee list. His name is spelled incorrectly, and I can make that simple change for us. Other than that.
Okay.
And declare,
So,
asking for just approval of the minutes of the consent agenda item at this time. Is that correct?
Yes.
well, what we're going to do, LaRue, is I like to not blanket over the minutes of the previous board meetings.
Okay.
I'd like to approve the minutes of the December 16th board meeting independent of the rest of the consent agenda items. So at this time, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of the December 16th, 2020 meeting.
Also move that we approve those minutes.
Okay, it's been moved by Lewis. Need a second.
Second by Wilkins.
Seconded by Wilkins. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion
Now,
approved.
as I understand, we have someone that wants to speak on the financial statements. Is that correct, Rochelle?
I do not, oh, I see someone with their hand raised. It's just a phone number, so I will check and see if that person has a comment regarding financial statements. If you're listening and you do not, I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to speak, but if you're calling in for another agenda item or number 3 regarding the wilderness forestry, we'll ask you to hold your comments until that item is called. Caller, can you please state your name for the record?
I think they're muted, Rochelle.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Carl Davis, and I was not allowed to give my comment during the public comment period. I emailed you this morning, Ms. Chavez, that said I would be speaking and I would be trying to make this meeting. You did not call on me or give me the opportunity. There are no instructions on how to raise your hand for an audio call. So I would like to make my public comment at this time, please.
Excuse me,
Go
Director.
ahead.
Did you want to
Go
allow
ahead.
All right, so I understand that I'm being given the opportunity to read my public comment submitted this morning. I'm here to address the issue that Mr. Griffin, Ms. Chavez, and Director Tresson has been included in various email chains and letters and has chosen to remain silent, have violated my First Amendment rights. I am requesting that this Board of Directors reverse this decision to censor and redact my public comments in a public forum opened up by TTSA, a public agency. 3 categories of public property for public forum exist. First, there is the traditional public forum, places such as streets and parks that have traditionally been used for public assembly and debate where the government may not prohibit all communicative activity and must justify content-neutral time, place, and manner restrictions as narrowly tailored to serve a legitimate interest. Second, there is the designated public forum where the government opens property for communicative activity and thereby creates a public forum. Third, with respect to public property, which is not by tradition or designation a forum for public communication, the government may reserve the forum for its intended purposes, communicative or otherwise, as long as the regulation on speech is reasonable and not an effort to suppress expression merely because the public officials oppose the speaker's view. On December 14th, 2020, I submitted a written letter to TTSA to be read during the public comment period of its monthly Board of Directors meeting. I specifically requested that my letter be read so it would be memorialized in audio and video format along with my written documentation. Ms. Chavez, Mr. Griffin, and Director Tresson were included, denied my request to read my letter. The first violation of my rights occurred when the phrase, "my wife," was redacted from my letter. It is publicly known who my wife is, Kristen Davis. Mrs. Robin Redmond was allowed to provide public comment on her husband, Mr. Jim Redmond, without any censorship or redaction of her statement at the December 15th, 2020 TTSA Board of Directors meeting. The second violation to my rights occurred when the phrase, "for buying my wife a $3,000 bathtub for her birthday with a love note attached asking for her home address to have the bathtub delivered." How is this confidential information and deserves to be censored? This information was also exchanged in email between Mr. Griffin and myself. At the August 19th, 2020 TTSA Board of Directors meeting, I made these statements about TTSA Shift Supervisor Chris Aiello. This statement is already public knowledge and is not confidential information. To further validify the proof of my statement, I possess the original love note Mr. Chris Aiello, TTSA Shift Supervisor, sent to my wife on her birthday to prove this encounter. The
Mr.
third
Davis, you
violation
have
to my
1 minute.
Thank you. The third violation to my rights occurred when the terms Miss Kristen Davis and Chemist 2 to the Chemist 3 were redacted. I possess this information as a result of permission from Miss Davis. The fourth violation to my rights occurred when the phrase officially releases Kristen Davis from promotional probation. I have received permission from Miss Davis to possess this document. The fifth violation to my rights occurred in the following paragraphs outlining Miss Kristen Davis's written disciplinary action on November 2nd, 2020, provided by Michael Peak. I have received permission to use Mrs. Davis's written disciplinary action. I'm going to skip to the last paragraph. TTSA has taken a bold step to inhibit information which is unflattering for them. I have spoken to members of the community who are perplexed at the actions of censoring and redacting written public comment from a member of the community by a public agency. I am asking this board of directors to properly remove the redactions and restore my First Amendment rights. If this board of directors chooses to take no action, I will seek legal action against TTSA. This is your first opportunity to do the right thing, and I have references to follow my statements. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Davis. And Mr. Davis' written public statement or public comment was emailed to the Board of Directors for their consideration this morning. And that is all that I have. You may continue, Director Cox.
Okay.
Hey,
moving
Dale.
back- Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for reopening public comment to allow Mr. Davis to speak. Is public comment closed now?
Public comment was closed when we went to the professional achievements agenda. We allowed Mr. Davis to speak only because there was some kind of an error in recognition for that agenda item.
Okay, thank you. And then, so I've got a follow-up question on public comment for our legal counsel, Mr. Shanahan. And I'm wondering, Dick, if you could offer some insight as to why it was necessary to include some redactions in Mr. Davis's letter.
Sure, Dan. I don't want to get into too much detail about the legal allegations and threats made by Mr. Davis, but I'll respond generally. There's two things going on. One is the right of a member of the public to speak at these video conference board meetings, which the agency has not restricted other than through time limitations. Mr. Davis and other members of the public can come on these meetings and state whatever they would like within the jurisdiction of the agency's business. The second issue is what documents the agency chooses to include as part of its minutes and the written record of the meeting. And in compiling those documents, the agency, in consultation with its labor council, have redacted information of a confidential personnel material. Mr. Davis may have that information, and he may have the consent of the other party to share it, but that doesn't necessarily mean the agency should share the confidential personnel information in public documents they could post it to its website. And so we made decisions to redact certain personnel information to protect the privacy interests of agency employees.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Dan?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to move on with the rest of the consent agenda items. If everyone has had a chance to review item 3 and item 4 of the consent agenda, and there's no questions or comments, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
It's been moved by Lewis,
Second by Wilkins.
seconded by Wilkins. No further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Oh, actually, Blake has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Blake.
Dale, just a couple comments on the financial statements and all that. One, I did notice it looks like the annual permit fee to the State Water Resources Control Board on the order of $140 some odd thousand. That's the first time I remember seeing that invoice, and just wanted to check with management that that's standard annual fee for our NPD or our WDR permit with the state.
Blake, I can confirm that it is our annual permit fee. And I do believe it is included in the board packets annually. I can go back and verify and let you know.
Okay. And then secondly, I know that the financial statements were through the end of December, but I was just curious whether the agency had received its first teeter payments for property tax and user fees from the counties and whether everything seemed to be in order there. I know we'll see that on the next month, but I was just curious.
Michelle, can you respond to the first teeter payment, please?
Michelle or Rochelle?
Michelle, I apologize.
Okay. Go ahead, Michelle. You're muted. There you go.
Yes, we received money from Nevada County and El Dorado County in January, and that would be reflected in our January board statement.
Good to hear.
And we should be receiving Placer County as well in January.
Thank you, Michelle.
Welcome.
And then last comment, Dale, was I was going to make a request that in future financial statement reporting that we get a status of our CERPT, that's our OPEB, Retiree Health Savings Trust Account. If we could get a status report on that as well on a monthly basis, that'd be great.
Yeah, Blake, one comment on your state water resource control bill, for the discharge permit. That's been going up anywhere from 3 to 5% a year. So that does go up every year.
Thanks, Lane.
And any comment on the last request by Blake? President Cox, we can incorporate some into the financials for the next month's CERP update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments in regards to the consent agenda items? We have a motion on the floor that was made by Director Lewis to approve. Need a second.
The second was done by Director Wilkins.
The Director Wilkins. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
and Director Smeltzer,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Dale, a quick question. Did we approve the general fund warrants yet?
That's part of the consent calendar. The
Yeah,
rest
2
of
through 4 are includes the fund warrants.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. That the consent that we just approved was items 2 through 4 and not 3 through 4.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rochelle, as clarification, I would like, as far as the consent agenda, I would like the minutes to be an agenda item to be approved on its own and not part of the consent agenda. If that's possible, and would the board be okay with that? I think that that having the minutes of the previous board meeting reviewed independently of the consent agenda is in our best interest to make sure that we don't miss anything on the previous meeting. Anybody have any problem with that being a independent item on the agenda?
all good.
Okay, Rochelle, could you handle that, please?
Absolutely. I will make it happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the regular agenda items. Let's talk about the report from the December 16th, 2020 closed session meeting.
Yeah, President Cox, Board of Directors, at the conclusion of a closed session of the December 16, 2020 Board of Directors meeting, the meeting was adjourned without providing a report from closed session. I just wanted to report that there was no action taken during closed session.
Any questions or comments regarding this agenda item? Seeing none and hearing none. Item number 2, presentation from the California Special Districts Association. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Cox. For those going online, we are on page 85 of the electronic version online. The agency was contacted by CSDA, Mr. Dane Wadle, I hope I pronounced that correctly, And he requested to address the board and provide an update of their take brief action and upcoming events of the coming year. So with that, we will hand it over to Dane.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Sounding good? Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, as the general manager stated, Dane Wadley, I'm the CSDA field coordinator for, well, essentially the Tahoe Basin, in your guys' case, throughout our Sierra network, as we like to call it. Just wanted to come on, touch base with you guys real quick about a few things that CSDA is working on. As I'm sure you know, the agency itself is a member of CSDA and has been for quite some time. You guys are one of our oldest members. And then furthermore, all the individual districts that each of the board members represent are also CSDA members and have been for a while. So, a number of you I know, but like I said, just wanted to come on, introduce myself to the full board and touch real briefly on a couple of these items from our Take Action brief. This is CSDA's monthly, basically legislative update that we send out to our members. I obviously won't go through this whole thing because it would take too long, but I'm happy to answer questions on it. But I really wanted to focus on a couple of things, really kind of this preparing your district for potential COVID relief funding. So CSDA is currently and has been working over the past, well, basically since COVID started, right, to get financial assistance specifically for special districts and agencies such as you guys, right? The money that was allocated from the federal government in the CARES Act back in April went to cities and counties, but there was not a specific line item, if you will, for special districts. We, of course, are trying to remedy that. And one of the ways, we had a couple of bills last federal session that would have done so, both in the House of Representatives and the Senate. And we will be introducing, we have a couple of representatives in the U.S. Senate, as well as the House of Representatives, who will be reintroducing this legislation for the current session to try to get, again, some specific money allocated to special districts. So my point with all that is CSDA will be having what we call a call to action, where we are asking our members, obviously the agency and your individual districts, to basically write letters of support in this case for these relief funding efforts. We know throughout the state that districts and agencies similar to our partners in local government, cities and counties, have had there's been a significant impact of COVID and new expenses on those agencies. So you will be seeing that. I'll be following up with the general manager probably next week when our call to action comes out to try to get some assistance from from the agency, and as I said, from the districts as well. To that end, and this is on, I think on one of the pages, probably page two or three there of the Take Action brief, is that we are asking districts to, yep, you're going right there, perfect. That's survey. So you see item 2 there, it says complete a survey. We're trying to basically have an updated, updated data from all of our agencies about what the financial impact of COVID has been to your agency and to your individual districts. Why? Well, because obviously that's, the first thing that we get asked is, okay, well, what's the dollar figure? What are we talking about? What do you guys need? And when we have this information from our districts, it obviously makes it much easier for us to make that ask. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, a survey we did back in April, May of last year, the total statewide impact to special districts was around 1.2 billion in expenses and revenues, et cetera, losses. So it's obviously quite significant. So again, I guess my ask though primarily is for the agency to complete the survey if you can. It'd be a big help to us. And then again, next week when we have this formal call to action, a letter of support from the agency would be a big help. So that's the federal side. And then we are also working, on the state capitol in Sacramento. And we put out some information last week, hopefully you saw it, that essentially the state of California received an allocation from the federal government, of course, for CARES Act funding last April. The state essentially has not spent all of that money. There's about $800 million through their data they've released, $800 million, which is still available. Again, districts have not been able to access that funding unless they've gone through the counties. We're trying to encourage the governor and the state legislature to, release some of that money, if you will, specifically to special districts, because it's obviously available. We know the needs out there, so we're working that. We're working the state side, and then again, we're obviously working the federal side as well too. So there could be some kind of follow-up action I may request the agency to take with the state advocacy efforts as well. So lots of, as you know, right, very interesting times at CSDA too, and when we got a lot of balls in the air that we're trying to juggle and keep districts on the forefront to get some assistance for, what's obviously a unprecedented time and presenting new challenges to your agency and to your districts. So I think I'll go ahead and stop there. You can see there are a number of other issues that we're following. Obviously, it's very early in the state legislative process. We'll see what bills ultimately end up coming out. We'll obviously be in communication with you and with your districts about those issues, and certainly myself as well as your local liaison. So just encourage you to follow those throughout the year and always ask me any questions if you have any. And then also too, as I'm sure you're probably aware, CSDA is a training resource, professional development for special districts, board members and staff. So we have a host of programs that are available to all of you for training and just best practices in special districts. Our webinars are free this year for CSDA members. So obviously with COVID, I understand the financial impact to you, so we've made that available. And there's also scholarships for the non-webinars, if you will, to help offset those costs. So lots of resources to help you, to help the board members, staff, et cetera. And of course, we're doing that advocacy work on your behalf as well too. So I'll go ahead and stop there. Appreciate the opportunity to provide an update. Happy to answer any questions right now or follow up offline.
Okay, are there any questions from any of the board members? I see Blake has his hand raised. Go ahead, Blake.
Hi, Dane. Thanks for showing up and sharing this. I had a question on this COVID possible relief funding for the special districts.
Mm-hmm.
Scope of that funding relief. My member agency, TSD, as well as TTSA, I'm guessing the majority of the additional costs that our agencies have seen due to COVID are associated with the required leave benefits that we are required to provide. And I wondered whether the additional dollars that the agencies incurred in providing, sick leave and childcare leave that was mandated under the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, is that even on the table for being, refunded, or are these just hard costs associated with PP&Es or?
It's primarily with PP&E, Blake. I believe that some of those sick leave that you're talking about may be, we're kind of trying to get some clarification on that ourselves. So I apologize, I don't have a clear answer for you right now, and I will follow up with you certainly on that. But we think that there may be, obviously the districts were not available to access a payroll tax credit for some of those earlier last year, but I believe that some of the actual expenses that you have to pay may in fact, be, assuming we get access to the coronavirus relief fund at some point, that you may be able to get some reimbursement, if you will, for those.
Okay.
I need to check to be perfectly honest.
Thanks, Dane. That's it.
Any other questions for Dane in regards to his presentation? Seeing none and hearing none, thank you very much, Dane. Thank you for being a participant. Moving along to the next item on the agenda is presentation from the Wilderness Forestry Incorporated.
Thank you very much, President Cox. I was contacted by Mr. Wesley Hanson, the owner of Wilderness Forestry Incorporated, to see if there's any interest on behalf of the agency to enter into leasing options of agency properties. All this action, what you have are 2 attachments, a presentation and a map. So we will start with Mr. Hanson to prepare to present his presentation, and then I will follow up with this map. And the intent of this item is to, again, see if there's interest on behalf of the board to pursue any leasing options. It doesn't have to be a yes or no. It may be a request to come back with further information, but that was the intent of the item. So with that, I will hand it over to Mr. Hanson, and then I will follow up to discuss some potential areas there and reference the figure that's in the board packet. And for those following, we are on page 93.
Good morning, everybody. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Well, I'll be brief. I first want to start off by saying I appreciate the opportunity to present today my idea. I'm going to start off with my background and my current business. I started this business back in 2018. I noticed a need up in Truckee and the Reno area, both. We were lacking in any sort of mulching and or mastication equipment. We have plenty of tree services that can provide small scale projects such as limbing, thinning, etc. So I started the business trying to fill a niche, and ever since then, due to all the California fires, things have taken off. I have an excavator now with a mulching head, another skid steer with a mulching head, a chipper on tracks, which was also needed. I have about 6 to 8 guys, depending on the size of the project, and we've just continued to grow over the course of the last few years. We mostly take care of the larger parcels, Donner Lake Woods, including one, Schaefer's Mill. We take care of more of the 1 to 40 acre parcels. That was the niche that needs to be filled. We aren't a full-blown logging contractor, but we are a larger scale, larger acreage contractor. So as on the next slide, as I continued through, what I did notice in the town of Truckee is a need for a green waste facility. Now I know TSD up off of Cabin Creek does have a green waste facility, but I've spoken with them and I don't really feel they're being very progressive with how they're disposing of the said green waste. A lot of the time, due to the fact that the Loyalton facility, the cogeneration facility, has been closed for some time. It is under new ownership and new management, and they are trying to revamp so they can open up again, but we do not know when that's going to be. TSD has unfortunately just been pushing the ground up green waste, essentially just up in the landfill where it can slowly decompose, which then releases methane and carbon naturally. So it doesn't seem like they're being very progressive. We do have meetings with them as we continue on through this. So I do feel there's a need to dispose of green waste properly, take care of down and or fallen trees properly. And what I mean by that is use them for their intended purpose once they are brought down for building, etc. We could mill them, or use it for furniture, have a small firewood facility on site, but I approached Blake Tresson in the beginning, and then he introduced me to LaRue, and we're just trying to explore some sites in Truckee. Industrial sites in Truckee are definitely few and far between. And obviously Reno would be an easy one, but then we have the case of we have to then haul it, and it's for then hauling and using trucks and using more diesel, and then there's more of a carbon footprint. So my proposal to TTSA is to lease a parcel, which they will show you the parcel next to Tykert and Sons pit at the end of Yogurt Drive. And what I would like to propose is a green waste site for the homeowners and public agencies alike to take their green waste. We will then sort and dispose of properly. And what I mean by properly is we will grind up to a certain size that either Loyalton and or Honey Lake Power, which is currently open, will purchase and will then incinerate for power. Now, Honey Lake Power does power the area around Honey Lake and Susanville, so unfortunately we won't be able to utilize this, but at least we are disposing of it responsibly. With all this equipment does come a need for equipment service. Downtime is a major problem when you're running equipment. So on this site, I would like to have an equipment service center for myself and also for local tree services, which then brings up my next point about how we can utilize this property. With this increasing need for defensible space and tree work in and around the Truckee area, folks are having trouble servicing their chippers, servicing their equipment, and with down equipment, you have an issue with trying to stay on time and trying to continue on with your business. And without these local tree services, including myself working, we're not gonna be able to keep Truckee safe. So having an equipment and service center is a large portion of what I would like to do as well for the community. And also including, well, how we want to utilize the wood and how we want to utilize the logs that are brought in by contractors that are cutting trees down for the purposes of building. I feel that TSD is simply throwing this, they have been just throwing it away. They haven't been hauling it to the mill. So if I were to get this property, I would then cut the logs into 16.5-foot sections, 20-foot sections, and then take them to Quincy or take them to Lincoln, where they can be processed and used for building products. And finally, I would like to offer the local tree service and or construction community a place to take their equipment. And I feel that this is also a time savings for them. Cabin Creek is a bit off the beaten path of Highway 89. If everyone's familiar with where it is, it's been between Squaw Valley and Truckee. So it takes roughly an hour by the time you leave Truckee or leave their site, wait in line, make the payment, and then go take care of their chips. So I feel that if they can park at the Green Waste facility, they are becoming more efficient in what they do, which they are then keeping Truckee just that much safer. And that is what I'm proposing. There are some facts and figures. If we want to scroll to the cost and figures just real fast. So just what we'll be using on site. And I know it can scare some folks, and I want to say this in the beginning that we won't be running the equipment, the grinder all day, every day for 10 hours. I know there are noise concerns. I know Tykert has had this problem with their crusher and their equipment that they've been running there. We won't be running the machine for 10 hours a day and processing 3,600 yards, but I'm just showing some facts and figures about how much we can process as far as green waste goes and the ability for us to keep Truckee safe. Just another figure, I didn't keep this up on my on the presentation, but the Truckee area, according to local foresters and the Sierra Crest, has a roughly 500 to 600 trees per acre. And because of this, we have a bark beetle issue. We've been experiencing more droughts, and with these droughts become stressed trees, and with stressed trees becomes beetle infestation, which unfortunately the beetle infestation will be making its way over to the Truckee and the Sierra Crest and Tahoe Basin before you know it. They're already here. We need to be at 70 to 90 trees per basal area, which is 70 to 90 trees per acre, which is pre-Comstock. So in order to do this, there's a lot of material that needs to be processed in order to keep Truckee safe from fire and to make sure that our beautiful forests can stay healthy. And we can't, unfortunately, just take this and haul this straight to the dump and push it over the side, because we are then having a gigantic methane release with its decomposition. So possibly, and by doing so, we have a place to take it, like the Green Waste facility I'm proposing, and dispose of it for power, for decorative mulch, for the milling of wood, for building products, for furniture, etc. So that is what I'm proposing to TTSA and the board and to the homeowners. I really love Truckee. Truckee is my second home. I was born and raised in Reno, and it's just my way of trying to give back to what I've already done for the community with my current defensible space business. Any questions or concerns?
Rochelle?
We have several people that would like to make public comment on this agenda item. First, I have Stephanie.
Hey, Dale.
Oh, we want to take board comment
I've got
first?
a question just in terms of how you want to run this agenda item. And do you want to jump to public comment right now, or do you want to have some board discussion and then go to public comment?
Well, I'd like to do a board discussion as always for clarity, and then we could roll over to public comment. Dan, I think that this is a pretty complex item on the agenda for review. So what we can do is let's start out with any board comments, then we'll open it up to brief public comment, and we'll see where it goes from there. So go ahead, Dan, if you have any comment.
Yeah, a couple. First of all, I'd like to thank LaRue for bringing this item to us. You know, I think my assessment of this item, LaRue, is that, you know, TTSA is actually a major landowner in Truckee. I think through the wisdom of prior board members, TTSA accumulated a significant amount of land as buffer around the wastewater treatment plant. I think at the time some of the land was acquired, it was it was during a previous operation of the plant where we disposed of some of our effluent through spray irrigation, where I believe that's no longer an option for us because I think downstream water interests now insist, and I think we're legally required to return our effluent into the soil so that ultimately it percolates and works its way downriver. So we own a lot of land. I think that land that we own continues to be important to TTSA, even though we're not using it for spray irrigation. I think having that land as a buffer around the plant and having some of that land, you know, function as passive open space has value. I think that the TTSA board, even though it was, I think, mixed opinions at the time, made a good decision by allowing the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District to establish their transportation maintenance facility on TTSA property. You know, that in my mind is a use that's consistent with a buffer from the treatment plant, but at the same time providing value to the larger community that we serve. So as it relates to this particular topic, and the reason I'm kind of going down this path is, you know, I think there's a kind of a fundamental kind of holistic conversation we as a board need to have as it relates to uses of TTSA property for things other than buffer space around the treatment plant. You know, wildfire prevention, defensible space, disposal of green waste is an active topic in the community. I think with both land managers and with our local fire suppression services, you know, the Truckee Fire District, North Tahoe Fire Protection District. I think, you know, if TTSA can play a role in advancing the cause of fire resiliency and land management in the region, I think we should be open to that. I'm a little bit cautious kind of going from 0 to 100 in terms of, you know, jumping into a long-term lease agreement for TTSA land without understanding a little bit more information as to how this kind of use on our property does in fact advance the cause of wildfire resiliency in our region. So, so really two things. One, specific to this proposal, I would be interested, before being able to form a strong opinion on whether this is a good use of our property or not, to hear from some of our, Forest Service as a land manager, the local fire districts, other entities who I know North Star Community Services District is working on a project to take biomass and convert it into heat energy, and how a facility like this could either support that effort or work against that effort. I don't understand that. So I think there's some questions in my mind. So I think the concept of TTSA land being used to improve fire resiliency in the region, I think has merit. In order for me to get to a point where I were to be willing to take that step, I would need more information as to whether or not we're actually accomplishing that, or whether we're just creating competition to the existing operation that's up at Cabin Creek, and it doesn't really move the scales that much. So that's related to this specific topic. I think as it relates to the broader topic of use of TTSA land for things that benefit the region, that's something that I'm open to. But I think it's something that we as an agency need to have that conversation at the board level, kind of at a broad level, because I know in the past, I think TTSA has been very cautious about using TTSA land for anything other than, buffer space, possibly spray irrigation, possibly future SAT fields, and moving down a path of making the land open for things other than that, I think is a big deal and warrants maybe a higher level conversation by us as a board. So with that, I'll stop. Those are just my initial thoughts.
Okay, Lane, you got a comment?
I got a comment. Basically, I believe you and I were the only ones on the board at the time that the transfer took place, where we allowed Teichert to mine on TTSA property in exchange when they were finished for their acreage to be a permanent buffer zone for TTSA. We had a year and a half discussion, all the legal work. I don't even think we're finished yet. It says on there that we have incomplete reclamation by Teichert on that property, and I would hate to have anything come in front of us to subject another leasee coming on the property, and that we even consider anything till the time that Teichert is finished with the reclamation. I want to ask General Manager Griffin if they are complete, or how long does Teichert have to complete the reclamation on their property and on our property.
Director Lewis, as indicated on the map, can you pull the map up, Rochelle?
Yes.
I was going to follow up Mr. Hansen's presentation with a map, so I think now would be a good time to address the map, and I'll roll into the discussion of your question there, Lane. Can you zoom in on that a little bit, please? That's good. Perfect. So what you have here is a map of the current Teichert properties under lease with the agency. If you go further west, well, this map is to represent potential areas based on the proposal of Mr. Hansen. If you go further west towards Butterfield Drive, those are areas that are dedicated to our current SAT or future SAT. So the potential areas that we're looking for development for this proposal, other proposals would be the phases that we have here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you go down in the key, they do identify which ones were revegetated and where the reclamation is complete. You'll see here for the purple hash mark, hatching phase 4 and 5, they are not complete. It was revegetated in 2017. They have 5 years to complete it. they are struggling with it. So at the end of the 5 years, we will see if it's successful. And if not, there are other provisions within the lease agreement to allow them additional time to correct and finish the reclamation. If you could move to the northerly area, Rochelle, on the map, please. That's a larger area. There are areas there that the reclamation has been completed, excluding the red portion on the bottom right-hand corner. That is incomplete. It was reclaimed in 2014. The 5 years was in 2019. However, we are working with them right now to finish their obligation to finish the reclamation process. So to answer your question, Lane, they have 5 years once the mining is done to start the reclamation process. And there are provisions in there to allow us to work with them to complete that. So when we were talking about, if you could move the map so I can see the bottom of the phases, please, Rochelle.
Oh, sorry.
For potential discussion of specific properties here, we would be looking at phases 4 and 5, simply because it's along Jorger Drive. It's easier access, minimal effects to the current Tykert operations going on. And the property north of the Tykert pit or Tykert operations right now, I had viewed as potential areas for some solar projects for the agency. So with that, this map was just to accompany and let you give a perspective of where the potential locations might be. There's additional work that needs to be done in the staff write-up. There are some other issues that we will have to contend with. It's over our soil aquifer treatment. There may be some potential reclamation obligations left for the State Mining and Geology Board and the town of Truckee, which could be impacted. Like Mr. Hansen had stated, there are some environmental concerns, noise, aesthetics, air quality, water quality. Development in the area would be subject to the town Truckee zoning, planning, and permitting requirements. And we may have to make amendments to easements or agreements to allow for the additional road use for potential traffic should that area be developed. So with that, I hope I addressed your Lane.
Okay, yes, you did. I'd like to make further comment here that, you know, when we did this transaction with Tykert, we were taking that property as a buffer zone property for the good of the agency. And when we looked at the property in itself, you know, we noticed, you know, they have quite a bit of issues as far as the reclamation, and Tykert did agree to do all the reclamation for that site. In exchange, we, meaning TTSA, allowed Tykert to mine a portion of our property for that property. And I would caution the board that when we went to the public before, we said that this transaction was for the betterment of the community as a whole, as in creating a buffer zone around the plant. We looked with anticipation that Tykert would eventually cease production and Jorger Road traffic would no longer exist down there. And now, you know, obviously with this new proposal, I mean, I'm all in favor of everything that Wilderness Forestry does, but you get back into the issue of what we promised the public as the purchase as far as a buffer zone completely around the plant. And I believe we would be negligent in the respect if we opened it up to anything else. Now, with regards to the USD property at the far western entrance to Jorger Road, you know, that was an issue that we also had a lot of discussion on. And we did allow that to take place, but only because it was at the far end of the far western end of the Jorger Road, and that there weren't people coming in or close to the plant. Don't forget, the only incident we ever had was from a truck driver coming into the Tykert plant when we had a chlorine leak. And that was an issue. And then we put on safeguards when we made it for the Legacy Trail, that the gates could be closed at any time if there was any issue at the plant to where we can protect the public. And this is a public, what we're doing here with regards to that buffer zone is a public protection of the entire Truckee community. That's my comment.
Thanks for that
Blake?
clarification. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks for that historical information, Lane. That's very useful. And like I said before, I want to really commend the previous members of the TTSA board that had the foresight of basically putting a long-term plan in place to put that previously privately held property, the Tykert mine, into public ownership long-term. And I also appreciate the historical information on, you know, commitments that were made to the public. And I think for me, that further emphasizes why I think, you know, we as TTSA sometime in the next year would be well served to have a conversation again about whether we're willing to look at any portions of our land holdings for uses of anything other than just buffer space. I fully understand the concerns of the folks up in Glenshire that live up in Royal Crest and in that area that have direct visibility and you know, can see the mining operation down there. I think, as you pointed out, Lane, yeah, TTSA owns a lot of land to the west of here as well. I think that's less visible to the Glenshire neighborhood, less visible to the community as a whole. And, you know, if we as a board were open to uses of portions of our land for things that provide regional public benefit, then the question, so there's a tier one question of ours, are we open to that basic concept? And then if we are, then the question is on what portions of our land. It doesn't necessarily mean all of our land. And from my perspective, that would be the first conversation for us to have prior to jumping into the specifics of a given proposal, which is what we're looking at the moment. So, and I don't know where that conversation leads. I suspect there's probably differences of opinion on this board as to whether TTSA land should just be used for buffer space or whether there's an opportunity for it to be used for buffer space and other regional serving uses. You know, wildfire prevention being an interesting one to consider. So thanks. I'll stop, Dale. I apologize for interrupting.
Dale, can I further on Dan's comments?
Yeah, go ahead, Lane.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to that, you know, we did make a public pledge when we got that property, and the Glenshire people were notified and encouraging us to purchase that property, and we were willing to give up some of our area for mining in exchange for that property. And we made a commitment, I believe, at that time that, I mean, that was solely for the purpose of a buffer zone. Now, if you want, like what Dan said, though, if we want to look at any of our properties, you know, the only properties I would think that would be useful here is as far, because it is a regional, this is a regional issue, would be to go to the far western edge of our properties. But there again, you get into more areas like closer to TSD and the airport area up there. This property down here, there's nothing, once Tykert leaves, we made that commitment that once Tykert left, that this would be a permanent buffer zone for TTSA. and I don't know whether you close, where Jorga Road would then close at Butterfield Drive or not. We never got that far in the equation, but if we're looking at any area, it would certainly be, I would suppose, to be at the far western edge, and I don't know if that would be applicable at all. But I just want to make sure that TTSA always honors their commitments to the community in how we purchase that property, and that we stay put with that commitment. At this time, I would not be interested in having anything down on that Teichert property. That's my opinion.
Okay, Blake, let's hear it.
Thanks, Dale. Great comments from both Dan and Lane. Lane, appreciate the background. I wasn't here when those lease agreements were going on. I guess for the general public, my understanding is that we own all those kind of hatched areas and areas within that dark lines is property owned by TTSA. Some context, so Wes's company provided TSD, and we own property further west on Jorga Drive. Wes came to us responding to our request for somebody to do some defensible space work on our property. Wes provided us with a proposal to do that, and in discussing with him, he approached me about utilizing some of TSD property for this green waste processing, larger regional green waste processing facility that he explained that he believed there was a need for it. My immediate response was, well, why, TSD does own property, but it's undisturbed. You have a facility down here at the end of Jorga Drive that's a materials handling facility. The land is highly disturbed. There's a scale. This is a place that you would need to weigh stuff. I said, I encourage Wes to reach out to Teichert and see if this would be a consistent use on the property where you wouldn't be disturbing undisturbed property. And that's sort of where this went. I realized it was on TTSA property, that there would obviously need to be some probably renegotiation of a lease. I recognize now that this is within the town boundaries. So I guess those folks that are listening in from the community, and some of them raised some good points in their comment letters about, EIRs and these impacts. I do not believe that TTSA could, even if we as a board all decided this was a great idea, we want to bring Wes onto the property, that we could just allow that use to happen. There are a lot of public processes and hurdles that, unfortunately or fortunately, I think it's good, that need to take place in terms of rezoning the property and looking at the impacts associated with the use there. So I don't think that this can happen with a simple two-party agreement right now to make this happen. But again, recognizing the potential commitments that TTSA made when we originally, leased the land at Teichert. That aside, I see the potential for higher uses of this disturbed property, and I recognize certainly the forest fires and the need for a lot of green waste management in our area. I'm with Dan in that I would certainly like to get some input from Truckee Fire, North Star Fire, North Tahoe Fire, to make sure that this does actually move the needle above, the facilities that are already available to the community. And so I'm interested in, cautiously continuing to pursue this. I think Dan's comments about a general land use that the agency allows on agency property is also probably an appropriate step that we should take. It shouldn't just be first come, first serve. There should be some sort of master plan we have in terms of use of our property that any people who come to us would need to be consistent with that. So those are my comments. I guess just one other point of clarification. Wes mentioned several times he was referring to the Eastern Regional Landfill and the activities up there, and refer to them as TSD. That's not TSD, that's TTSD. There's a lot of acronyms here and they're really overlapping, but that's I think it's the Tahoe Truckee, trying to remember what their S is, but it's the garbage company up there and not TSD. So any of the public that's listening, that just want to make sure that's not TSD. Truckee Sanitary District is not a partner up at the Eastern Regional Landfill in the activities that are going on up there. But I think this is a great discussion, and the role that TTSA can play in the community is a good one. And I want to have it be open and transparent. I'm glad to see the public is engaged, and hopefully the eventual decision is one that best serves TTSA's needs as well as the community.
What other comment?
Go ahead, Lane.
Yeah, don't forget, one of the things that we've just done with the Tahoe Truckee Airport District was there again to increase our boundaries around the plant as far as the exchange of property that the airport got, increased the amount of buffer zone that TTSA has. That was a plan for that we put out there, that we wanted to increase the buffer zone, not decrease the buffer zone. And I believe as a director here, I feel I have to protect the plant at all times, and having a greater buffer zone. Just like when the trail went in, we made sure that we had precautions there for the public that we can take care of to stop the public from going through if we had an emergency situation at the plant. And that's why with Tykert, that was one of the major thing was no traffic back down, really below Butterfield Drive or a little bit with regards to the land use. And I believe we should stay put with our land use here as a buffer zone. I mean, if we had a solar farm or something like that, where there's not so much as any daily impact, that would be one thing. But there again, I mean, we did allow the school district to be in there. And I think a lot of us had second thoughts about that after the fact, because they keep coming back to us and asking us to increase their footprint. And we have declined that. Once you have one person in there, it opens up everything. And I will not I just think it's a can of worms, and I don't want to have TTSA utilize a lot of time on this issue now when we have more important issues in front of us. Thank you.
David?
Yeah. My thoughts are that, it's a sound idea, I think, and it's going to go somewhere, I think. But my concerns are we're putting a industrial park, it sounds like, over the top of the aquifer. And I would really want to know how that's going to work and what safety precautions and all the rest of the questions. I'd have to have all those answered thoroughly. That's my comment.
Okay, it looks like I got the final comment. I hate to be an ogre in all this, Wesley, but TTSA has had an ongoing, not so much a problem, but a situation where people have wanted us to lease property to them, and I'll have to agree with Lane with the Unified School District. That was opening the door to a continual campaign of people wanting to lease our property, and one of the things that we hold very dear from the past boards is that buffer zone that Lane has alluded to a number of different times. And you have to keep in mind of the headache that we went through with Tigert and the pollution that we had on our property, trying to alleviate some of the problems we had with people bringing in foreign material and dumping it off and using it for fill and all of that. I mean, I don't think that is over as far as for dealing with Tigert and trying to secure a good, clean buffer area. And I have to caution the board to even address dealing with a complex like what Wesley has presented to us. I think that there's a possibility of other areas over by Hobart Mills. There's a lot of acreage over there. There's a huge operation of logs and things going on over there. I just have to say that our commitment to the public was a buffer zone. From the time that we brought this operation into existence, was that we needed to have an area, a safety zone around that plant. And we are going to be continually barraged with people wanting access to good, convenient property. And I feel we should hold firm, directors, and our commitment to the public, and that is making a buffer zone for this plant and holding all the areas that we have around the plant free and open and unencumbered. And that, once again, is a commitment that we made to the public when this plant was brought into existence. We had a lot of discussion with the Glenshire people that looked down on our operation, and we have a commitment that that we keep this this boundary around the plant a safe zone. And I really feel that we should have a closed door policy on anybody coming to the agency, because there are really good, valid reasons for people to want to use our property. But we have a commitment to the taxpayer and the public to maintain a safe and operation here, and we should stick to that commitment. So I don't know if there's any further comments that anyone should be making. Dick, do you have any comments? We have negotiations that are being taken place and ongoing with the airport district. And I think that we still have an open door on some of the litigation that we were facing with Tigert and the pollution problems that we've had with their existence. I just don't think that we have room for any more problems of utilization of our property. You got a follow-up comment there, Dick, on where we stand here with any anything that's going on?
Sure, Dal, I'll keep it brief. On the legal side, there are several issues relating to this proposal that the agency would need to resolve moving forward. Much of that, though, is getting the cart in front of the horse. At this stage of the discussion, it's really a fundamental policy and business decision about land uses on your property that are compatible with your buffer need and the board's desire on that. The one thing I did want to stress, though, is following up on Blake's comment, this land is within the town of Truckee. The town of Truckee is the land use agency in the area. Any agency use of the property for non-sewer purposes would be subject to all of the panoply of zoning, use permit, and other approvals by the town of Truckee. And the town, therefore, would be really the principal agency to decide the appropriate land uses for this area, less so than the TTSA board's role as a landlord. So if the directors want to move this thing forward as a fundamental business point, that probably ought to be the next policy threshold, is to touch base with the town of Truckee, because they will very much drive the bus on the land use decisions. And then the last comment I want to make is this certainly is a proposal subject to our California Environmental Quality Act that would require either the town or TTSA, we would need to sort that out, to prepare an appropriate environmental review document to analyze all of the issues that have been raised in the staff reports and in the comments from members of the public through what may need to be an environmental impact report for this proposal. So those are just my preliminary comments.
Okay, Rochelle, as far as for any public comment in regards to this, do we have anybody on the horizon that wants to make comment?
We have public comment, but if the board is finished with theirs, we do have several letters that were submitted for your consideration. And right now I have 3 people who wish to make public comment.
Okay, go ahead, Rochelle.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead with Stephanie. It looks like you are muted. Let me unmute you. Stephanie, if you're there, if you would go ahead.
I show her still being muted, Rochelle.
Yeah, I do too. If you would like to raise your hand and you're a phone caller, please, you can press *9 to get. I have additionally David Galson. Mr. Galson, if you would like to go ahead.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much for taking public comment at this stage. I think that the needs addressed by Wilderness Forestry are definitely needs that the community has. But as a resident in the Glenshire area, I can say that the Teichert plant has a very, very big impact besides the standard environmental concerns about air quality and water quality. The sound levels emitted from that plant can be heard far beyond the actual crest houses, but way up, all the way up the hill where I am. And so my concerns are that I think I'm concerned about the sound level of the vehicles and the heavy machinery in that area and the odors that will be generated by any additional industrial activities there. So I think that we, I'll keep it brief, but I just think that the use is incompatible with that general area being adjacent to Martis Creek and the Truckee River and the growing need for Truckee to recognize its environmental sensitivity and draw for tourism. So I'm saying go ahead with this kind of activity, but not there. Look over where at the Eastern Regional Landfill area. I'll look over by the airport, anywhere but that close to a large residential area. I'm not quite sure how it came into the same communication, but there was some discussion of some kind of asphalt crushing and shingle creation or roofing material production in that site. And I don't really see why we're extending any additional permissions for industrial operations once the mining is done. So thank you very much for considering those concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Galson. And I see Stephanie is still muted. Stephanie Bloom. Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Hi, thanks for your patience. I'm a public school teacher and in between meetings with kids, but I just really appreciate Mr. Lewis and Mr. Cox in your wisdom about the commitment to the community and what that could look like for the people living not only at Truckee Pines Apartments, but also the people in Glenshire community. You know, that's a great open space for kids and families. We bike in that area, we hike and run in that area. And I think my understanding is the current zoning says that it's open space and resource conservation area. And I think we need to be very mindful about how we use it going forward in terms of how close it is to water, people, the bike path. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stephanie. And now we have Mr. Craig Strom, if I hope I'm saying that correctly. Mr. Strom, you can go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Like she said, my name's Craig Strom. I'm a full-time resident in Glenshire. And I think as others have said, what Wilderness Forestry proposes to do is, I don't think anybody's opposed to that. I think, however, this location, it already, what's going on there significantly impacts the residents of Glenshire. I know as a resident, my house is not right on the edge of Royal, but I can hear what's going on down at the Tykert facility. I can smell it. The odors are really strong. I can visually, when I walk over to that side, you can see dust and other particulates being spewed into the air. So I have concerns about how that impacts us. With the understanding that that facility would be wound down and there's a commitment for that area to be a buffer, I appreciate what the board members said about honoring that commitment. And obviously with this new proposal, I have serious concerns about a continuation or of the noise, water, and air quality impacts. So I just wanted to express that I am opposed to this proposal. Perhaps there's a better location somewhere around town that would be available for it, but this close to a residential area in an area where there was a commitment for a buffer for the residents of Truckee, I just don't think it's the appropriate place for it. And I think that's all I needed to say.
Thank you, Mr. Strom. We have another Mr. Steve Smith.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a Glenshire resident. I'm retired. And I agree that this is a facility that the community could benefit from, but I also think this is not the best place for it, because I think Martis Valley is a geographic bowl, essentially. And when you have an atmospheric inversion, the pollution levels get pretty high. And we're talking about burning 500 extra gallons of gas a day. If you had a car that was making 20 miles to the gallon, that's an extra 10,000 miles driven. I don't know exactly how that translates to machinery, but that's not an insignificant amount of extra pollution, and especially on an atmospheric inversion type of day. Add that to the noise, the dust, extra truck traffic. I just think it's a bad place for it, really. I think it's a great idea. Maybe 10 miles north on 89, there was an old mill up there. You could look in the leasing land, I don't know. But this is not the place for this plant. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And we also have Pippin Mater. Go ahead, Pippin.
Great, thanks, guys. I really this is a super interesting discussion, and I really support the idea of a biomass processing in Truckee. I think it's a great idea. I think that's a great idea to produce chips. I also recognize what they're talking about, right? The GWP of methane is roughly 30 times that of CO2. So definitely combusting in a biomass plant is more environmentally friendly than letting it essentially rot in a big pile and turn into methane. I also will say that, truck is growing, and I'm really supportive of what Dan was talking about with using TTSA land for the general good. I get what you're talking about with the buffer, but there's less sprinkler irrigation than there used to be, or sprinkler for the effluent. So I think that TTSA has an opportunity here to be a good member of the community. And so I look for opportunities for TTSA to do that, including possibly putting this facility farther, to the west. I do have genuine concerns about the location. I don't live close to there, so the sound and whatnot are not a concern. But looking at the map of where you're proposing this versus the map from October about your disposal field, this looks like it's right on top of part of the disposal field. And of course, as Dale mentioned, that Teichert, it's been a rocky road, pun intended, with Teichert and their, barium issues. So I'm supportive of the concept. I'm supportive of TTSA using their land for the community's, best interests. And I'm supportive of that you thinking about a different location within your land. Thanks.
Thank you, Pippin. And if anyone else would like to make a public comment on this item, you may raise your hand using that option at the bottom of your screen. Otherwise, if you're on the phone, you can press *9 and it will raise your hand. And I have not received any further emails besides those that were distributed to you earlier today and yesterday. So at this time, I see no other hands raised.
Okay, go ahead, Wesley.
I appreciate everyone and considering this land, and I'll continue to pursue, and hopefully I can find, if TTSA can't find land for me to use, I'll continue just for the sake of helping the community out. I do have to run, so I do appreciate everyone's time, but I have to run down to a project just south of here. So if anyone has more questions for me, let me know right now. If not, I'll be signing off.
Okay, any questions or comments left over for Wesley before we move on the agenda? Seeing none and hearing none, Wesley, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, Rochelle, we've had a number of public comment. If you could generalize those comments and see to it that they're entered into the minutes for the January 2021 meeting.
Will do, yes, sir.
Thank you. Go
Okay.
ahead, Blake.
I'd like to understand, and I think it's an appropriate action at this point, you and Lane's discussion of the commitment that we made. If there's language in the lease agreement that defines, future use of that property, I certainly would like to understand that. If I had known, that there was perhaps a prohibition on, any development, that was made, I would not have, sent Wesley down the road and initiated this whole process if I had known that. And so it would be good for us and LaRue. I don't know what kind of digging that's going to take through the records with Teichert, but if there are some clear land use restrictions on that property in the future, it'd be good for the board to understand that, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Blake, during those discussions way back when, it was over probably as I say, the negotiations almost took a year and a half. Public involved, and the reason, the specific purpose for purchase was for buffer zone. And I don't know if, because then the tricky points in this whole agreement was holding Teichert to its feet as far as reclamation work on the property, because in exchange for that mining, we did not want to inherit a piece of property that was contaminated. And so the bulk of those negotiations were in the reclamation end of it, that when we receive the property, that we receive it in a good state as far as, you know, no petroleum products, you know, and that environmentally that everything's returned to us. But I'm not sure, it'd be interesting to take a look at that. All I know is I just remember the public being there and, you know, encouraging us at that time and pointing out that they always wanted to get rid of Teichert in a lot faster form, but we said, no, I mean, it's their property and we can work to see them end their use of that property, you know, at a certain period of time. And so the, you know, the public at that time backed off of it a little bit. But the gentleman brought up a good, you know, we brought up again way back when was the inversion. When Glenshire gets an inversion, you know, some of our smell and some of the Teichert air, it significantly impacts the air quality at Glenshire, and that was brought up back then as well as that guide now. So, but let's look into it.
Yeah. I think the definition of buffer lands and, you know, what does that mean? And are there, you know, clear restrictions? It'd be good for us to understand that.
And Blake, I'm generally familiar with the lease agreement at issue, and it's in regard to your question, it's a standard landlord-tenant lease. At the expiration of the lease, the landlord gets the property back without restrictions. So I'm not aware of any binding contract restriction. I think it's more in the nature of assurances provided to the public, not necessarily binding contractual commitments.
Thanks.
Okay.
One comment, Dale. Dale?
I'll go ahead and finish my comment, and that is, as one of the senior board members here, along with Lane, I want to make clear my commitment to the taxpayer and the community that this buffer zone that we talked about and that's been a subject of conversation over the years. I feel very strong about our commitment to keep a buffer zone and the safety barrier around this plant. And as the town of Truckee and the Tahoe Basin expands, there's going to be a never-ending request for people to come in and want to use part of our property for public benefit. And I hate to sit back and have to take the time during our board meetings to discuss this, and it's a situation that it should be known to the public, and that the TTSA board and the organization is not going to address infringement on that buffer zone that we have fought so hard to maintain. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm for keeping that buffer. And we're going to have an ongoing request for people to use our property. And I just hate to see and hate to sit back and turn people down with legitimate requests for the use of our property. But our main objective is to run a safe operation here and to allow other entities to come in here and start utilizing agency property. I'm just not for it. And I'm going to hold firm in my policy as a director to keep this buffer zone around the plant intact. And so that's all I have to say about it. I mean, it's going to be continually under attack, and we have to be able to hold firm. Any other comments before we move on?
Yeah, this is Dave. I would just wanted to ask the question, is there any use of that buffer land that can be allowed? And if there is, if we don't just leave it empty, if there is some use, kids flying kites or whatever, but if there is some use, let's specify what it is. And that would kind of put an end to people coming in and asking to put in an industrial park. So maybe that is a discussion for the board.
Yeah, I've got a
Go
comment,
ahead,
Dale.
Dan.
Yeah, so I agree with what Dave said. So I understand your position, Dale. It's basically keep things simple, just say no, to any non-agency use of the property. I think there's opportunity for the agency to maintain an acceptable buffer for safety purposes and for nuisance reduction purposes. And I think there's an ability for some of our property to be used for other public benefit. I don't know exactly what that is. I don't know exactly what pieces of land that entails, but I think my opinion is different than yours, Dale, in terms of I think we should be willing to consider things beyond just passive open space on our property, on at least portions of the property. But I also agree with what David said, which is that it should be on our terms. So if we're going to do that, let's think about why we would do that and under what circumstances and in which areas. I think there are types of uses on the land that are conducive to setbacks from the wastewater treatment plant. And if there's things that we can do as an agency that provide greater benefit to the public than solely our wastewater treatment function, I think we should have an open mind to that. So I'll stop there. I think as it relates to the item that's in front of us, it's clear to me that it would be premature, for us to give LaRue direction to continue negotiations with this particular person on that property, for a green waste processing plant. So I think I think the reason LaRue floated this was to get direction from the board as to whether we should continue conversation or not. My sense is that we should not continue conversation at this point in time. I think the question to the board is, do we want to have a more holistic conversation about the use of the TTSA property in the future, understanding that there's different opinions on the board that we would need to work through as a part of that conversation. I think we should do that.
I think it'd be a great idea because, it's like Dale said, I mean, let's get some framework. Let's take a look at everything. So this process is defined. If somebody comes to the general manager 10 years down the road, no, that's not a permissible thing here. No, TTSA will not consider anything. We will consider. It just eliminates this process, and I think it'd be beneficial that we set a policy for the buffer zone. But we need to, right now, as I say, we've got a lot on our plate. We need to get stuff done.
Go ahead, LaRue.
Yeah, so, just to repeat myself, there is no action on this to commit 100% to the development. What I can do is come back next month, or actually the next couple months, with a map of all agency properties, get some further information about what the agency holds property-wise, present it to the board, and we can start getting towards a general land use plan to address the topic of future developments within the agency. And as it plays to the wilderness forestry development, we can put that on hold, because I did hear not a complete shutdown, but more of an inquiry for more information. So what I'll do is I'll respond to Mr. Hanson and let him know that we're kind of tabling that until we have a discussion about general use or general land use for the agency. Does that sound like a reasonable direction?
I'd be supportive of that.
Okay.
Okay,
Give us a couple months.
go ahead, Shanahan.
Again, I just want to remind the directors that TTSA is not a land use agency. So I wouldn't spend too much time as a TTSA only effort doing a land use plan for your substantial acreage, but rather any effort in that regard. And frankly, I agree, it may be a good idea, but it really needs to be done either in concert with or by the town of Truckee, which is your local land use agency.
Okay, I think we beat up on this long enough. I'd like to move on to the agenda. With that being said, let's talk about approval of the updated annual performance evaluation template.
Vicki Lafrano, do you mind taking that item, ma'am?
Sure. Good morning again, President Cox and directors. For those following along, we are on pages 106 and 107 for this item. In October 2020, the board approved the agency's new annual performance evaluation template to be incorporated into TrackStar for employee annual performance evaluations. The template included agency core values and functional competencies for each position. The template has been updated to incorporate newly approved job classifications, as well as changes to existing job classifications, which were approved as part of the organizational assessment at the December 2020 board meeting. Staff, management and staff recommend approval of the updated annual performance evaluation template.
Any discussion? Seeing none and hearing none. Any comments from the public?
I see Pippin Mater has his hand raised. I'll go ahead.
Go ahead, Pippin.
Sorry, I had myself muted twice. I just want to say thanks. I understand that core values represent 50% of the total, which I think is really substantial. I recognize why you might do that, but I also am a little concerned about the subjectiveness of some of those, those categories, and I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Pippin. Any other comments from the board? All right, at this time, I'd like a motion to approve the updated annual performance evaluation template as presented. Need a motion.
Also move. This is Dave.
It's been moved by Smeltzer, seconded by Wilkins.
Second by Wilkins.
No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
and Director Smeltzer,
Yes.
and finally President Cox.
Yes. Next item is
Motion
Exhibit
approved.
5. Approval of the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Act.
Excuse me. Good morning again, directors and President Cox. Again, for those following along, this is these incorporate pages 108 through 114. This agenda item originally asked for approval of the attached policy today. Since the publication of the agenda packet, new information has become available as far as the possible extension of the federal law and/or amendment of the federal law, which may include an extension through September 2021. As such, please consider the following as a discussion item, which will hopefully produce direction for a possible policy to bring back next month. With that said, the TTSA handbook became effective in April 2020. Also in April 2020, a mandated as mandated by the Department of Labor, TTSA enacted on an emergency temporary basis the FMLA leave expansion and emergency paid sick leave policy for coronavirus. This emergency and temporary policy was effective from April 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, and that law has now expired. As COVID-19 continues to cause a nationwide disturbance, the agency continues to desire to provide certain benefits to employees who are impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The attached document for your review would provide emergency family medical leave, or EFMLA, and emergency paid sick leave, EPSL, to employees from January 1st through June 30th of 2021. Again, as these laws are no longer federally mandated, the agency merely desires to extend any unused balances that were provided between April 1st and December 31st of 2020 into this new eligibility period that we're speaking about. And again, as discussed moments ago, there has been discussion about the federally mandated law being extended and/or amended. Should TTSA determine to bring forth an amended policy at next month's meeting, the policy should remain in effect during the time period proposed or until such newly mandated federal laws take effect. So again, please view this item as discussion only to provide feedback related to a possible policy to bring back at next month's board meeting.
Okay, go ahead, Blake.
Vicki, I'm just trying to follow. I'm following this also at TSD. So because it appears that the federal government might extend or amend the leave that you're proposing to extend, we're going to hold off on taking that action and wait to see if it becomes federal law. And if it doesn't, then we might take this action in February.
There were a couple of reasons for asking this item to be a discussion item rather than accepting the policy as written. So of course, when the policy is written was placed on the agenda item, it was in good faith to have the policy accepted by the board members and then bring it forth to the employees. However, a couple of things have happened. We've determined that the EFMLA portion, or the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act portion, which formerly in the previous time period from April 1st through December 31st, any amount of time used for EFMLA went against or was in was within a pool of 12 weeks of leave for regular FMLA. So it could be considered, it wasn't in addition to, it was, it followed along with, if I'm saying that in an understandable manner. Additionally, now knowing that this new, there may be an extension to that federal law, and also knowing that the way we're trying to bring this forth would just be an extension of time. And the spirit of the policy was intended to state that it would also be in line with any FMLA time, but that cannot be the case. Meaning that anyone that would be able to use this EFMLA policy as we have written it would mean they would be eligible for up to 12 weeks of leave. Additionally, because this is not a federally mandated law, any employee that was eligible for FMLA or CFRA would also be eligible for a 12-week bank of leave, meaning if they utilize this EFMLA time and FMLA time, they could potentially be eligible for up to 24 weeks of leave in a rolling calendar year. And that wasn't really our intention. Our intention was just to bring forth the balance of any leaves that were available, just to try to help out any employees that may fall under the need for additional leave related.
Okay, that's a great clarification. LaRue, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is a benefit that does expire, like Vicki said. We do anticipate that it will be extended by the federal government. We just think it's a good opportunity for the agency to support its staff. I think there are individuals that are still going to be subject to COVID-19, even though vaccinations are going on right now. And I think it's something that the agency should implement in a teamwork effort for staff. I just wanted to make sure that it was understood, like Vicki said, when this was prepared for us, we anticipated just the 12 weeks for the FMLA, and now it's being compounded to potentially 24 weeks. So we wanted the board to be aware of that potential. And again, just to reiterate, we're not talking about resetting the balances for leaves. We're just talking about extending them. So if you have already exhausted your balances, you would not be able to benefit from this. Again, this is what we're anticipating until the federal government should say anything or pass anything. So the effort today was just to have the conversation, get some feedback from the staff, from the board of directors to determine if they want to extend either the EPSL or the EFMLA, and to what extent, because of the compounded potentially 24 weeks with the FMLA and EFMLA. I hope I stated that correctly, Vicki.
So that's great. I applaud you guys. We're bringing a similar item to TSD's board tomorrow to extend the benefits. We don't fall under FMLA, so we don't have that issue because of the number of employees we have. So we don't have that loophole. Does it make sense to possibly, instead of completely tabling the proposal that's presented to us, to move forward with the EPSL portion of it and not take action on the one that has the concern of creating an additional unintended burden on the district? Or does it make more sense to hold off on all of it and wait for the potential federal action that might come? Is an alternative.
Counselor?
LaRue, I didn't hear you clearly, but I think you stated that I should answer that. Is that accurate? Okay, and Blake, thank you for your question, and I would certainly be open to that being part of the discussion. If the agency and with the board's direction wanted to just keep the EPSL portion of the policy and remove the references to the EFMLA, we could certainly do that. And that would alleviate that potential issue that we have been talking about today. Of course, again, the EPSL portion is no longer federally mandated. So it is really just something that TTSA would be bringing forth, I guess, just to benefit employees that may be, may have the COVID-19 issues within their lives. So that is certainly an issue, or certainly a possibility, yes.
So Vivek and I have discussed this, and that is one of the options. In lieu of just tabling it, we could adopt the policy with the contingency that the EFMLA is removed and have staff be the beneficiaries of the EPSL. And we would make that with a retroactive date of January 1st. So that is an option, and it's a preferred option among between discussion with Vicki and I.
Okay, with that being said, do you want to move ahead with approving a portion of this presentation today? Would that be agreeable to the rest of the board?
I would make that motion to approve just the EPSL portion of the motion before us. And just to clarify, I mean, it is a benefit to the employees, but it benefits the agency as well, because it encourages and provides the opportunity that folks that have, perhaps restricted leave balances and may want to come into work when they're not feeling well, that opportunity not to come in, which benefits them and also prevents perhaps community spread within the agency, which could jeopardize the agency's ability to perform its function. So it's not just an employee benefit. I believe it's a benefits the agency and its mission, and therefore the community as well.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, before we move on, Rochelle, would you like to read the motion as presented from Director Tesson?
So the motion would be to approve the emergency paid sick leave policy retroactive to January 1st, and we would table the EFMLA until February's meeting. So I have a motion by Director Tresson and a second by Director Lewis. Ready for roll
Okay,
call?
any further discussion? LaRue, a comment?
Yeah, I just want clarification on the EFMLA and FMLA. Would you like us to come back next month with further information or await any federal action?
I think we ought to wait any
Meeting-
federal action.
I'm sorry.
Anybody else have a comment?
LaRue, I
Dan?
think that the action you guys take will depend upon what the federal action takes and what you as, management think is appropriate. It may be that federal action takes place and negates the need for us to take any action, or maybe there is no federal action and, you feel like it's important to bring additional motion to us, but I would leave it to your discretion as to what may be on the board next month.
Just to summarize it, we would adopt, as proposed here, the emergency paid sick leave policy. And we'll monitor federal action and see if it warrants a revisit to the board to address EFMLA and FMLA. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and we have a second. Before I call for a roll call vote, any public comment?
None.
Seeing
None.
none and hearing none, roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is approved resolution number 1, 2021, amending resolution number 12, 2020, concerning employee benefit changes.
Vicki, would you mind addressing this as well, please? Thank you.
Okay, so those following along, pages 115 through 116 of the board packet. And in September 2020, the board adopted resolution 12-2020, which approved certain employee benefits. One of the benefits included was the employee vision benefit, which stated that vision benefits would be paid based on fiscal year of July 1 through June 30th annually. Since the adoption of the resolution, the agency has determined that it would be more appropriate to administer the vision plan on a calendar basis, similar to all other agency benefits. Management and staff recommend approval of resolution 1-2021, amending the employee vision benefit cycle from fiscal year to calendar year.
Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none and hearing none, any comments from the public?
I have no public comment on this item.
Okay, with that being said, we need a motion to approve resolution number 1, 2021, please.
I'll make that motion for approval.
It's been moved by Lewis,
Seconded.
seconded by Smeltzer.
Yep.
No further discussion. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Item number 7, approve to solicit bids for the 21 plant painting project. Discussion?
Yeah, I got some questions for Jay on this one.
Yeah, do you, LaRue, would you like me to intro?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, so good morning, directors. Before you today is the 2021 plant painting project, which builds on the work of prior years. So in this phase, we're focusing on rehabbing and recoating secondary number 2 and stripper basin 58. The construction work is anticipated to occur between May 17 and August 6. The engineer's estimate is $350,000, which is less than the $500,000. We had to reduce the scope of the work in order to, we couldn't have 2 basins down at the same time. So that's why the reduction. The recommendation of staff is that the board approved to solicit bids for the project. Lane, did you have questions?
Yeah, my question was, looking over the specs on the bid and stuff, it refers to, I'm concerned about the coatings they're using on what, there's new product material coming out. I mean, are we just going with what are the specs on the coatings that you could use? Because obviously when you get into the coatings, I mean, there's a big difference in prices between coatings, and I'd hate to see a contractor take the cheaper coating and leave us with less of product.
No, we actually have a pretty tight spec with respect to which coatings we use for. We have two different coatings we use for these clarifiers. One is for what's called the immersed service or submerged service, and the other is for exposed. Mm-hmm. And for each of those, we have a specific manufacturer and product that's considered the basis of design. And so any contractor that comes in and wants to substitute, they actually have to meet those requirements. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but
well, are we getting the best coating that you know of for this project?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion? What do you think, Richard?
My
Go
comment,
ahead,
yeah, my comment is really small. Just, I would encourage changing the title of these projects from painting. Painting conjures up a whole different type of activity than coating. So maybe for future years, it's just, when you talk about a $350,000 painting project, painting is
That's a
something
lot
you
of
do.
paint.
Yeah, these aren't paints. These are coatings.
Coatings.
Putting on there. So just something maybe you guys consider for future
no
years.
problem.
And
yep.
more clarity for the public and for the board itself.
Okay, no problem.
In the bidding population. But it looks like a good project. I assume that you guys have done some investigation as to the condition that's requiring the need for recoating these things, but you're on it, and coating is the appropriate response as opposed to replacement of these rake arms and other stuff. They haven't deteriorated to the point of replacement.
No, it's much more cost effective to coat these and keep them going than it is to let them sit there and rust and then have to replace. Absolutely.
Okay, how what is the coating frequency that we have in the past and you project in the future?
I'd go with roughly 15 to 20 years. It really depends on the service. How often is it? How often does it go through the wet dry cycle? The more often, the worse. Certain facilities where you have constant submergence, you have much longer lives. But the clarifiers are ones that we always watch because you have that constant wet dry cycle.
Thanks, Jay.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Any comments from the public?
I have no public comment on this item.
Okay, let's need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Been moved by Lewis. Need a
Wilkins, second.
Seconded by Wilkins. No further comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item. Approval of the solicitation of bids for the 2021 chiller replacement project.
Okay, so this project before you is the replacement of our chiller for the admin building. Out behind the building, the existing unit has reached the end of its useful life. The work is to occur at the beginning of this summer. Our engineer's estimate is $80,000, which is less than the original 150, and that 150 was developed during budget cycles as just through initial contacts from our vendors. As the project went along, we got further refinement on what specific products we need, and so that's why we're down at the 80K. So the recommendation is for the board to approve to solicit bids for the 2021 chiller replacement project. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, Blake.
Jay, what kind of analysis was done on the chiller replacement in terms of energy efficiency? Oftentimes, you know, an electrical item like this, the ongoing electrical costs can exceed the original capital costs. And I want to make sure that we looked at a life cycle cost analysis and selecting it, not the cheapest, you know, capital cost to meet the requirements.
No, I mean, so we work with our vendors to get bids on a unit that replaces the existing unit that's failed. So in terms of tonnage, we know what tonnage we need, you know, to serve the facility. The new chiller does have the more environmentally friendly refrigerants in it. So with respect to going with a product that's more green, I would say that this is greener than what we have right now. With respect to building improvements, you know, the main face of this building faces south, and we have the corridor, which is a kind of like a, you know, an airlock buffer in terms of the heat load that gets. The roof, we really can't do that much about. It is insulated. When we re-roofed this last summer, we doubled up the amount of insulation we have on the roof. So the heat load through the roof downward into the building should be less. So I feel like we've taken the measures we can to make this a greener project.
So that's good to hear, all those external steps. I just wanted to make sure that the unit you're buying is also, you know, that a life cycle cost is done on it so that the overall cost to the agency over its next 10 or 15 years of its life is lowest, not just the capital cost, but you know, I don't know what the energy consumption of the unit is, but I would hope that would be taken into consideration.
Well, I mean, yeah, we know we need a certain tonnage for the building, based on the, you know, what this chiller has been in place for 25 years about. So we know the load that it needs to support or needs to handle. And we did work with the vendors. Maintenance started the work with contact with the vendors. And then the engineering group continued to work with the vendors. We reached out to Jacobs, got their input on the units that we're purchasing. So did a life cycle cost happen analysis? No, to be out front, but we did, I feel, do our due diligence in terms of picking the appropriate unit. Richard, do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, just add in for Blake, the units are approximately 20% more efficient at the same tonnage rating versus this unit here. So it is definitely a greener unit.
Okay, any further discussion from the board? Seeing none and hearing none, any comments from the public?
We have no public comment on this item.
Let's have a motion to approve the chiller replacement project.
I so move. This is Dave.
It's been moved by Smeltzer. Second.
Second by Wilkins.
Seconded by Wilkins. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion
How
approved.
about, go ahead, Rochelle.
Just motion approved.
Okay, how about a approval of the engagement letter addendum from DeMoore, Hammock, and Schneider Incorporated?
Thank you, President Cox. As you know, DeMoore, Hamrick, and Schneider are the firm, which is the firm that performs our annual financial audits. We have approved for them previously a $32,000 agreement to have them perform the 2019-2020 annual financial audits. That agreement is based on an hourly rate plus cost fee structure with the not to exceed $32,000. They have been performing the work. The agency has done some changes since the last audit, which I believe is how they base their budget, their proposal. And they have come back and requested an additional up to $10,000, again, based on an hourly rate plus cost fee schedule to cover some additional audit work related to the creation of a new general ledger accounts and software conversion, which we did this past year. To address how the service charge revenues are being processed right now, and any related audit challenges. If you recall, we used to bill them directly, now we collect them on the tax roll. The recent bond issuance and related accounting, audit, and reporting requirements because of that, and extra time for the requirement of second audit field work. So the anticipated schedule right now is to have them come back in February and perform and provided a update to the audit. But to complete the audit, they have requested the additional up to $10,000 in the form of this addendum. Management and staff have reviewed it, and our recommendation is that we do approve the addendum letter.
Okay, any comments from the board? Seeing none and hearing
Hey, wait a
none.
second. I got a comment.
Oh, I didn't see your hand, Lane. Excuse me, buddy.
I'm going to make the same comment I make every single year, that it's better that we need to take, instead of just going with the same audit people, we need a new set of eyes to see if we've missed anything. And I encourage, you have this audit on board, but I always encourage next go around, let's get new eyes on this audit. I think it's beneficial to see how another company, even though this company's been doing it for 20 years, we need to take another look at things. So anyway, that's my comment, same as usual on the audit.
What do you think about this, Blake?
Well, I was just going to say that if the agency decides they want to pursue that, we are actually at TSD seeking approval tomorrow night to solicit bids. We're sending out an RFP for audit services. And so you guys feel free to, keep in touch with us. And if we get good results and response, feel free to, we'll share that RFP with you. Regarding this addendum to our existing audit of another $10,000, or, it's a pretty significant addition to a project of its size. I'm just looking at those 4 items and thinking that, a lot of those were pre-existing conditions. They shouldn't have necessarily been a big surprise to DeMoore. These weren't changes that happened in the process of the audit. I defer to management's decision. Will approve the addendum, but, I question to some extent, why they weren't aware when they prepared their engagement letter originally of these changes and have incorporated it and are now seeking, effectively a change order to do something that was a known condition when they went into it.
Rochelle?
So I'll let LaRue go ahead first. He might say what I was going to say.
Yeah, I first want to address that we did have the discussion last year of using DeMoore, Hamrick, and Snyder this year with the full intent to go out for an RFPs for the next financial audit. The reason we came with them this year was simply because we're going through all those transitional changes and we thought it would be a more fluid and easy transition. As it pertains to the work listed here and the financial impact to that, I would ask that Rochelle, she was involved in that considerably, and she could maybe provide some feedback to the work and the associated costs. If you don't mind, Rochelle.
Sure. With this audit, we actually changed our GL the second time, moving to Cassell software. So the previous year we had updated our AS400 system with the revised GL codes, and it had to change again very slightly to our Cassell program. So they had to update their own software system to match our system so they can reconcile those numbers. And so it took an additional time for them to do that, and also to spend the time understanding all our Cassell reports and the changes with that new software. Additionally, with the billing to the tax roll, it changed the way it was posted in the Cassell system. And also the bond issuance was something that none of the existing accounting staff had dealt with previously. So they did help us with some of that and had some additional work involved in reconciling that in our Cassell system as well. So there was a significantly amount more time involved with this audit than previous because of those updates.
Thanks, Rochelle.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Yes, to Lane's comment about trying somebody else, would it be more expensive to bring someone else up to speed? Same issue we were just discussing, or that Rochelle just talked about. Would it cost more? And are we going to do this by bid, or how are we going to select a new audit?
The intent was to go up for a request for proposals and see what the associated proposal cost would be. There would be a learning cost for anybody coming in, whether it would have been during the transition as we change softwares or as a new firm is coming in to learn our software. So I think that cost would be equal in both areas. I think it was just more of the familiarity of the firm we had, the process we had. We wanted to keep the transition as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
So the intent is to, like I said, Dave, to go ahead with RFPs, and I'll probably reach out to you, Blake, to see if we can get some pointers and see what you prepared for it. I hope that answered your question, David.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
I think
Okay,
Dan had a
any
question.
comment? Any further comments from the public?
There's no public comment, but I believe Dan still had a question.
Okay, Dan.
No? Okay.
Nope.
Okay, what are we gonna do here, man? Board? Are we gonna approve this letter of engagement, or
Yeah, I would move we approve this letter of engagement. It sounds like the expectation is that we'll go through an RFP process to look for a new auditor for next year. And whether or not it makes sense to try to tier off of the process that TSD has going on right now, I'll leave that to LaRue to determine.
Okay, need a motion.
That was the motion, wasn't it?
It's
Yeah, my
moved by
motion was to
Smeltzer.
approve, my motion was to approve the engagement letter.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Director Wilkins, a second from Director Smeltzer. No further questions or comments. Lane, you happy?
No.
Well,
For the
vote
reasons I said before.
All right.
A new pair of eyes is always good. Okay.
All right, let's have a roll call, Rochelle.
Dan Wilkins, sorry, Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
No.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes. Sorry about that, Elaine.
Motion approved.
Well, I'm sure you are.
All right, let's talk about what's going on in the plant. What's going on? Are we looking at, Greg, are you stepping in for Mike?
Yes, Mike's on leave for the day, so Greg is stepping in and he'll be providing the report for the operations department.
All right.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good morning, President Cox, Board of Directors. Thank you for having me today. I guess, like LaRue said, Michael is on vacation, so I'll be providing this report. So I'm going to start with the compliance report. And I'm happy to announce that all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. And then also staff did attend the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board meeting via teleconference. It occurred for 2 days. The first one was on January 13th. And some things that were mentioned regarding TTSA was the third quarter violation that happened in August, and there were no comments or questions from the Board of Directors at that time. And then on January 14th, Mr. Pippin Mader and Penny Denenberg addressed the Board of Directors. So for the operations report, overall the plant performed well throughout the month. And then well 31 pH, which has remained between a 6.5 and a 6.6, even with the addition of caustic to the final effluent. And then operators are continuing to train with the lab personnel for the weekend laboratory testing. And so for the laboratory report, the staff have performed all the necessary laboratory testing per the WDR requirements and operational needs for the month. Staff continue to train the operators for the MPN and weekend testing. And also happy to announce the recruitment for the laboratory director has commenced and is closing on the 24th of January, which is this Sunday. Laboratory staff and operational management also work together and have responded to the notice of violation and the order to correct as submitted by ELAP. And then the notice of violation is attached to this report. And to summarize, to start off with the violations, the first one, number one, was a failure to include the conditions for notification to ELAP of laboratory director changes into the laboratory quality assurance manual. The second was a failure to document a training program into the laboratory's quality assurance program. The third was a failure to maintain demonstration of capability records of implementation to laboratory's quality assurance program. And then the fourth violation was a failure to review standard operating procedures for standard methods 9221 and USC EPA method 300.0 into the laboratory's quality assurance program. There were some method deviations also listed, failure to implement quality control criteria in the US EPA method 300.0, and also a failure to implement the quality assurance criteria in standard method 9221. So there was a corrective action report, which was turned in on January 13th. Bill Pendar and Michael Peak responded to ELAP for that purpose. It was a report that was completed. It was a joint effort between LaRue, Michael, Bill, and myself. And then, so also there was a discussion regarding that provision to create a policy to ensure that laboratory management and all personnel who work at the laboratory are free from any undue internal and external commercial, financial, and other pressures and influences that may adversely affect the quality of their work. This policy must be included in the laboratory's quality manual. So this statement, we had a conversation with an ELAP representative. There was a meeting through teleconference with LaRue, Michael, myself, and Bill, where we asked the representative if they considered this a violation, or if they felt that there was undue influence. And they stated to us unequivocally, no, they did not feel it was, that this was happening at the agency, but it just needs to be included in the quality assurance manual going forward, and for that matter, all quality assurance manuals, because of the 2016 T&I standards, which will be taking effect soon. And then also laboratory staff continue to review and update all standard operating procedures, perform the required demonstration of capabilities, and other required tasks to maintain ELAP compliance. So with that, are there any questions from the board?
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
Yeah, Greg, I understand the response back was a 125-page response back to ELAP. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And
is that available online for people to look at or not?
At this time, not right now. I'm not sure, LaRue, if we plan on doing that.
If the board liked that response along with the notice violation be included as a link on the website, I can ensure that gets done.
Okay. I mean, is it a lot of work? I mean, to put that on there?
No, no. I don't know if it's the typical standard stuff we post our website, but if you get that done, I can make that happen.
Yeah, I thought it'd be good to put it on the website in case somebody has questions on how we responded.
Very well. I'll make sure that it's put on the website in an appropriate link.
Okay, I got a couple of questions, and I agree with you, Elaine. I think that the recommendations from ELAP ought to be made available to the public. It's just a matter of being transparent with the public. But for Greg, a couple of questions in regards to the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board meetings. On January the 14th, we had Pippin Mader, who has been vigilant in watching the operation of the plant and seeing to it that we're conforming in all manners. And Penny Denenberg, I've never seen Penny Denenberg's name. Is she, can you explain to me, is she a member of the public? Who is she? Has she been to our meetings before? I've never seen her name.
Yeah, that was the first time I had seen her name. LaRue, did you want to expand on?
Yeah, I've never encountered a Miss Penny Denenberger attending any of our meetings.
Okay, so she was just a member of the public that chimed in at this January the 14th meeting, correct?
I do believe how she represented herself at the meeting.
Okay, and then finally, when I look at the list of violations, Greg, it appears to me that all these violations are procedural violations from within our lab, and hopefully when we bring in a lab director, that these violations will cease to exist, or we'll get the proper leadership there that will make sure that this doesn't happen again. What's the proper procedure here that we can expect?
Yeah, well, first we'll be expecting the lab director. When we hire the new lab director, they would come in, and then they would go through the quality manual. and make sure everything is meeting the requirements from ELAB. We do have a good start. There were a lot of changes in the quality manual that were updated for this corrective action. And then a lot of clarification that I believe that was needed. But as far as with the next laboratory director, they will be in the process of converting over to the T&I standard, the T&I standard, which is going to become effective in a few years, which kind of beefs up everything that we have for our quality manual. So it's going to continue to get, there's going to be further detail included in that. And that should be happening in the next few years.
Okay, go ahead, Lane.
Yeah, for Greg again, I mean, with the T&I standards coming forth, you know, I want this district to be proactive, not reactive, as far as, you know, as far as T&I is concerned, and having the, you know, like, you know, as far as the separation and far as undue influence from the lab to anybody, you know, as far as taking punitive actions upon them, that's been in the Q&M policy, has it not? Or has it not been written up? As opposed as to what the T&I, and what would be the difference that what we have as opposed to the new T&I standard?
Well, yeah. So previously, that statement was not included in our quality manual. However, not to say that that wasn't an understanding with the lab.
Okay, but I mean, part of this process is including that in the manual, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we're going to be. Yeah, once you go to the T&I standard, that is part of the standard.
Okay, let's not be reactive. Let's be proactive. Thank you.
Okay, LaRue, as far as for applications for lab director, are we getting some applications that show promise? What's an update on the applicants?
I have not looked at the application pool. I am aware that we have received some applications. I think there's 5 when I last checked last week. And with that, I think Blake was going to ask a question or provide comment as well. Dale?
Yeah.
Go
Dale,
ahead,
if you don't mind. Yeah, I was going to follow up. I'll follow up on your question there. It's good to hear that the application is out and you've gotten some applicants. Given the importance of this position and the speciality of, you know, a lab director position, I'm curious as to, you know, the review of those applicants and the interview policy, if you're bringing in any outside assistance to supplement, you know, I would assume Vicky and yourself, and possibly, you know, Michael and Greg in the, you know, the review of the applicants in the interview process.
So we were for the process for our panel, we were going to have staff internally here. Myself, like you stated, Michael Peak, Vicky as HR, Greg. We were also going to reach out to South Tahoe after we review the applicant pool and ask that they participate in the panel. When they were recruiting for their laboratory director, we assisted with them, and I'm hoping they would be able to provide that assistance. So that is one of the actions for the interview process. We fully intend to do the first interview round of interviews via teleconferencing using Zoom, and then any follow-up interviews would be in person, hopefully.
Great. Yeah, I encourage the use of, you know, partner agencies and that have expertise in these areas to assist the district. And I was also just going to, while we're on it, I appreciate the communication from you, LaRue, on, you know, when TTSA comes up in front of the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board, letting us know. And I appreciate you gave us, you know, not only notified us that was, you know, coming up, but that, you know, you gave us the exact portions of the audio and video recordings that we could tune in and see what's being discussed at the regional board. So if if we continue to be on their agenda, and you're aware of that, I would like to encourage you to continue to keep the board apprised of that.
Will do.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments for operations? Public comment, operations.
Would you like to take public comment at the conclusion of all the department reports, Dale?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, LaRue.
Yeah,
A
that's what
streamlined thing.
we have been doing that, so that's.
Do we have a comment?
I'm just agreeing with LaRue. That's the process we've been doing, is at the end of all the department reports, taking public comment.
Okay, sounds good. Next would be Richard.
Morning, President Cox, Board of Directors. It's a pretty straightforward month for December with the holiday month. We did work with, continue to work with engineering closely on various projects, including wrapping up our portion of the admin remodel project and assisting with a chlorine scrubber replacement project. As far as the maintenance project items, one I'd really like to highlight is the B&R influent pump VFD replacements. That's about a 2+ year project between getting approval to bid it and acquiring the VFDs and then installation. So I'd like to call out the work group, the E&I staff, Tobin, Dean, and Ryan, including the supervisor, Paul, who oversaw the project. The guys did an outstanding job of a quick turnaround on the 3 installations to minimize downtime. Startups went smooth. Installation is a top-notch professional install, and it results in the agency saving a significant amount of money versus contracting the installation out. So it was a very successful project, and I want to give the credit where the credit's due, and that's what the guys that installed them. Outside of that, various multiple pump rebuilds through the month. Did another centrifuge VFD. We've been doing a lot of VFDs, have you seen this year? A lot of them just been hitting their end of life. And we've been trying to be proactive. If we have one fail, we're being proactive to replace the ones that are next to it that have the same age and run hours on them. Pretty much wraps up the month of December. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay. Seeing none, hearing none. Jay, what's up?
Morning again. So yeah, month of December, the engineering department worked on a large number of projects, some studies, some purchase contracts, some construction projects, a whole laundry list here that's in the report. I'm happy to expand on any of those if any of you have any questions on any of those projects.
I'd just like to let you know, Jay, that that the remodel on the office there and your offices and the boardroom and everything, they looked absolutely great. And I'm anxious for the rest of the board to go in there and check out the improvements. I'm sure that they'll be very impressed. Thank you for a good job.
Yep, thank you. And I'd like to thank all the other departments for working with engineering on that job. I think Aaron mentioned it at the last board meeting that it took everybody coming together as a team to move out and move back in so quickly. So thank you to maintenance, operations, IT, admin, everybody for weathering through that. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments for Jay? What's up, Bob?
Good morning, members of the board. The IT department has been focused on infrastructure upgrades for our web services. We've ordered a new server that is currently being installed and configured that will be hosting all of our public web applications. We have also been working with operations on SCADA and process improvements. In particular, we've fully automated the running of the O2 basin bypass flow. We tested during the high flows of the holiday season, and the operation was smooth and reliable on that. We've also been assisting engineering with their projects, providing help with specifications and IT and automation requirements for the Headworks lime delivery system and the master plan projects. Luke Swan, our new hire for IT specialist, will be starting on Monday. And we are looking forward to adding his skill sets to our department and TTSA overall. Any questions?
Yeah, Bob, with regards to Luke, and where does he come from? What are his qualifications?
He comes from Contra Costa. I think the Water Authority in Contra Costa, it's a public agency down there. And he's been with them for quite a few years. And he has extensive SCADA and just, general IT skills, for sure.
Okay, he's familiar with Lucity and everything else, correct?
That I'm not sure about.
Okay, because he has to implement, he'll be involved in implementing that into the GIS, correct?
I think that's mostly for the maintenance staff, but
Right.
I'm sure the IT will be involved in that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other
Talking
questions?
about different folks. LaRue, you're currently recruiting for a CMMS GIS person, whereas Bob recruited specifically for an IT person.
That is correct. We are recruiting for both of them. And there will be some crossover when they're working together, because some of those systems will require assistance from both departments.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Bob? That concludes our department reports. Any public comment?
Admin.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll address the admin reports. I have nothing to add to what's listed there. Just want to bring attention to the photos of the boardroom. Like Jay and Dale had already talked about the efforts in there. Again, a thank you to everybody involved in it. It did include everybody. It looks good. We hope to provide a representation of what the boardroom looks like now. And then hopefully shortly we'll all be able to come back in and you guys will be able to utilize the space. And with that, I will take any questions to the administrative report.
Seeing none, hearing none. Rochelle, any public?
Yes, we do have public comment, and the only person I see, we have a few. So let me go ahead and I will have Jane Davis would like to make a comment. Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Yes, Jane Davis here. I'm concerned that Mr. Peak did not present an honest and factual report to this board. If the board members actually read the simple 3-page notice of violation and order to correct, you would already know that Mr. Peak misrepresented what it says. The requirement that TTSA develop a policy. I'm sorry, was I muted?
No, we
Okay.
just stopped receiving. So you said something about policy is where you left off?
The requirement that TTSA develop a policy to spell out that the lab director, not Mr. Peak, must have full supervisorial oversight has nothing to do with the new TNI standard, which does not go into effect until 2023. TTSA was cited for violating a law that was enacted in 1994, one which Mr. Peak should be fully aware of. In documents presented in your board packet, there is a notation that Mr. Peak intended to maintain supervisorial responsibilities, including hiring, evaluation, and discipline, rather than the lab director. So board members, you should ask yourselves why Mr. Peak and Mr. Griffin attempted this sleight of hand, and emphasizing the issues of documents that need to be included in manuals, and then attempting to minimize the major part of the violation, that management cannot interfere with laboratory staff. They tried to gloss over their own clear attempt to compromise laboratory integrity. This board should not be taken in by Mr. Peak's subterfuge. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Next, we have up Pippin Mater.
Great.
ahead,
Can you guys
Pippin.
hear me? You guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks. I just wanted to bring a couple quick points. One was I was definitely surprised to see my speaking at Lahontan was included in the operations report. I just found that a surprise. Just, I guess, in a full clarity, I did speak at all 5 of the member district board meetings also. Then similar, I guess, to what Jane was just saying, that I understood what Greg said about what ELAP said about the violations, but when I read it, it doesn't appear that way. They lump the management issues in under the violations, even when you read it pretty carefully when they self-reference inside there. But either way, I think it's great that it's in the new documents. I think that it needs to be written down, so I appreciate that. And finally, I do really appreciate the board members suggesting that the response to ELAP be provided on the website. That was something that I was going to reach out to ELAP and request, but if it was presented on your website, that would be great. I'd love to take a look at that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pippin. And if anyone else would like to make a public comment on department reports, you may use the options at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand or press *9 on your phone to do so. Let me check this one just in case. Just a moment. No, I have no other public comments. I have no one raising their hand and no other emails on this subject.
I saw Carl Davis window pop up. Was that it? Okay.
Yeah, I allowed him permission to speak due to his previous comments about board comment that he wasn't able to, and he has not replied. I gave him permission and asked to unmute his phone, and he did not reply. So I assume
Okay.
he's not there.
So with that, it concludes any comments in regards to the department reports. General Manager, any further comments?
No, for the general manager report, I have nothing to add other than the fact that I'll touch on the ELAP. I will go ahead and post that to the website. It is currently under review by ELAP. We did receive an email response that I was copied on when Bill, the laboratory director, supplied that to ELAP that they would look at it. So I'll put this up. I'll make sure that it's declared that it's a draft. Again, I just want to reiterate the level of effort included in there. I just want to show and state my thanks and appreciation for Greg, Michael Peak, Bill Pindar, Kristen Schrank, Kristen Davis. They had to not only perform their daily duties, but also additionally meet the corrective actions of ELAP. And like Director Lewis has stated, it's a 25-page document. So there's quite a bit of effort in there. So thank you to them for that. There's really nothing much to add in addition to what's already printed. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for LaRue? Seeing none, hearing none. Anything closing comments, Rochelle?
I have no one requesting to make public comment at this time.
Rochelle, thank you very much for being the event coordinator here during these meetings. I think this forum that we're dealing with is much more user-friendly, and I'm hoping that we continue to use this platform. Good suggestion there, Dan, to move us into this direction here. So, Counselor, any closing comments?
No, sir.
Okay, if there's nothing else to be brought before this board meeting of January the 20th, the year 2021, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
What about director's comments?
Yeah, President Cox.
I don't want to, you've talked enough already, Lane.
Are you censoring
me?
me?
I'm sorry. Director's comments, what about you, Blake?
Nothing at this time. Thanks, Dale.
David,
Nothing this time. I'm good.
Dan?
None.
Okay, Lane, you got anything? to
Okay,
say?
you're asking me. Good. Hey, I just want to reemphasize, like I did last month, we're hiring new employees. We need to address the situation with lifetime medical benefits and have a tiered system coming in place.
Okay. Anything else? Vicky, any closing comments? Thank you all very much for a great meeting, and I'll see you all next month.
We need to make a motion or second on the adjournment.
I'll second
Okay.
it if I didn't make, okay.
Go ahead.
Lewis made the motion, seconded by Wilkins.
Yes.
Thank you.
All in favor, roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn is approved.
What do we do in closed session now?
12:01. There is no closed session for this meeting.
Okay.
So this concludes our meeting for today. Thank you all very much. And I have 12:01 was the time we adjourned. So thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.